The moment the girl stepped out of the snow and into the warm diner, everything inside the Navy SEAL tightened in a way combat never had. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. The kind that hits before logic, before reason, when something broken in the world quietly asks to be seen. She stood there thin and shaking, boots soaked, dress too light for winter, eyes holding a depth no child should carry. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She only asked for a seat. And what the man would discover later would break him in ways no battlefield ever could. Before the story goes any further, take a second right now. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that one small moment can change a life forever, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter because people like her are real. The diner sat on the edge of a small Midwestern town, the kind of place where snow buried memories instead of erasing them. Outside, the wind cut like glass, turning every breath into pain. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, fried eggs, and warmth that felt almost undeserved if you had spent too long without it. The Navy SEAL had chosen that booth not because it was comfortable, but because it let him see the door. Old habits from years of war refused to fade. His K9 sat beside him, disciplined and calm, eyes always alert, ears tuned to sounds no one else noticed. The man wore his uniform without ceremony, shoulders heavy with things he never spoke about. He was home on leave, but home didn't feel like a place anymore. It felt like something he'd lost. When the door opened and the girl stepped in, snow clinging to her hair and dress, the entire room shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a subtle change in energy, like the air itself holding its breath. She looked no older than 12. Her hair was tied back badly, as if done by hands that shook too much or had learned too early how to rush. Her dress was worn thin, too thin for winter, and her hands were red and cracked. She didn't look at the counter or the menu. She looked at the people. Not to ask for food. Not to beg for money. She looked like someone searching for permission to exist. The Navy SEAL noticed how most eyes slid away. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Others pretended to scroll their phones or stare into mugs. It wasn't cruelty. It was something quieter and worse, avoidance. The kind that lets suffering continue without responsibility. The girl walked slowly between tables, steps careful, as if she'd learned that moving too fast could draw the wrong kind of attention. When she reached his booth, she stopped. The dog lifted its head slightly, sensing tension but not threat. The man looked up, meeting her eyes. She asked for a seat. Not food. Not money. Just a seat. Somewhere warm for a little while. There was no hesitation in him. He nodded, shifting slightly to make room. The K9 adjusted instinctively, sitting closer to his leg, calm and steady. The girl sat at the edge of the booth, posture stiff, hands folded in her lap. She didn't relax. People like her never do. Warmth feels temporary when you've learned it can vanish without warning. The waitress noticed then, her expression tightening with concern and uncertainty. The man ordered quietly, adding an extra meal without explanation. He didn't look at the girl while doing it. He didn't want her to feel watched or examined. He knew that feeling too well. Combat had taught him what it was like to be reduced to a problem instead of seen as a person. As the food arrived, the girl ate slowly, carefully, as if afraid the plate might be taken away. The dog watched her with soft focus, not intense, just present. Animals understood things humans often ignored. The man noticed how her hands trembled less as warmth returned to her body. He noticed the bruises on her wrists, old and yellowing, half hidden beneath sleeves. He noticed the way she flinched when the door opened again, even though it was just another customer escaping the cold. They didn't speak. Silence, when done right, can be a form of respect. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with a napkin she folded neatly, like someone who had learned manners mattered even when survival didn't. She stood, hesitated, then nodded once in gratitude before moving back toward the door. The man watched her go, something heavy settling in his chest. He considered following her, offering help, asking questions. But years of hard lessons told him that pushing could do more harm than good. Sometimes safety meant letting someone leave with dignity. The door closed behind her, and the diner returned to its normal sounds. Forks clinked. Coffee poured. Conversations resumed. But the Navy SEAL couldn't shake the feeling that something unfinished had just walked back into the snow. He stayed longer than planned, staring at the window where a reflection had vanished. His K9 rested its head against his knee, sensing the shift in his breathing. The men paid and stood, preparing to leave, when something on the floor near the booth caught his eye. A small object, half hidden beneath the table. A folded piece of paper, worn soft as if handled many times. He picked it up. Inside was a child's drawing. Crude lines, uneven shapes. A small figure holding a dog's paw. Next to it, written in careful, shaky letters, were words that didn't belong to a child her age. "Thank you for letting me feel safe." The man's throat closed. His hands trembled, not from cold, but from impact. On the back of the paper was an address. Not a home. A shelter marked closed months ago. Something inside him broke then, quietly and completely. He left the diner and stepped into the snow, the world suddenly too loud, too bright. His K9 stayed close as he drove, the paper clenched in his fist like a mission briefing that mattered more than any order he'd ever received. He followed the address, knowing what he would find and praying he was wrong. The building was abandoned. Windows boarded. Snow piled against locked doors. The kind of place forgotten by everyone except those with nowhere else to go. Around the back, near a dumpster half buried in ice, he found signs of life. A thin blanket. A plastic bag with scraps of clothing. Footprints too small to belong to anyone who should be alone. He searched until night fell, calling local shelters, veterans groups, anyone who might listen. He learned the girl's name from a volunteer who remembered her briefly. She had arrived with her mother months earlier. The mother never came back one night. No report filed. No follow-up. The system had moved on. The girl hadn't. 4 days, the Navy SEAL searched. He postponed his return to base. He walked streets, alleys, parks. His K9 tracked scents that faded into cold nothingness. Each night, he went back to the diner, sitting at the same booth, hoping she would walk in again. She didn't. The guilt was crushing. Not because he had done something wrong, but because he had done too little. He had offered a seat when she needed a future. On the 5th day, during a snowstorm that erased the edges of the world, the dog stopped suddenly near a closed playground. The men followed, heart pounding, and there she was. Curled beneath a slide, wrapped in a tarp, barely conscious. Alive, but slipping. He carried her through the snow like something sacred, like something he had been trusted with and nearly lost. At the hospital, as doctors worked, he sat with his K9 at his feet, hands clasped, eyes burning. He stayed when social workers arrived. He stayed when paperwork came. He stayed when the girl woke up and saw him there, confusion softening into recognition. From that moment, nothing went back to the way it was. The process was long. Painfully slow. Courts. Interviews. Evaluations. The men faced questions he never expected to answer. Why him? Why now? Why care? His only answer was the truth. Because she asked for a seat, and the world had given her nowhere else to sit. Months passed. Winter turned to spring. The girl grew stronger. She smiled more. She laughed with the dog, who became her shadow. Nightmares faded slowly. Trust returned in pieces. The Navy SEAL learned a different kind of discipline, patience without orders, protection without weapons, courage without armor. On the day the adoption became official, he wore civilian clothes. No uniform. No rank. Just a man standing beside a girl who no longer looked invisible. She held the drawing in her hands, now laminated and preserved. The same words. "Thank you for letting me feel safe." Near the end of this story, before it closes, take a moment and ask yourself something simple. How many people have asked for so little, and how often have we looked away? If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel something real, please like this video, share it, and subscribe. Stories like this survive because you care. And before the ending, leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from and whether you believe one small act can change a life. Years later, when people asked the Navy SEAL what the hardest mission of his life had been, he never mentioned combat. He talked about a snowy day, a quiet diner, and a girl